Joining me today on the Capital TV show, Adam Lovinger. You are former Senior Director for Strategy at the National Security Council, and you are the Vice President of the Gold Institute for International Strategy. You are most welcome on the Capital TV show at the University Club.
Thank you, Maria. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Let's start with what Antony Blinken said or announced. He announced a joint action between the State and the Treasury Departments designating 14 individuals and 3 entities of the Iranian government accountable. They are responsible for complicit in serious human rights abuse. Your approach?
Yeah, Maria, so the way I view this is a little bit of a too little, too late approach to diplomacy. If we go back in time, I was in the Defense Department from 2004 until I was then seconded to the National Security Council, and I observed the entire evolution of the Obama doctrine strategy towards Iran. And in many respects, I mention this because what Biden is doing now, Biden essentially picked up where Obama had left off. And what was very clear to me, Maria, from the very beginning, working in the highest strategy office in the Pentagon, was that it was the Obama administration objective to normalize the regime. And there were many cases, including in the Green Revolution, where you had the Iranian people rise up and express their displeasure in the regime. And each time, Obama would side with the regime against the people. And
just like Robert Malley, what he did in his latest tweet, he apologized. It was miswritten or misspelled. So. That's right.
That's right. And what I see, Maria, is that this is really part of an overall, sad tendency of democratic foreign policymakers in this country, and the Democratic Party, to throw the people under the bus, throw the people who are freedom-loving under the bus, and really sort of coddle the dictators. And this is a tragedy. It's embarrassing for Americans. The American people are quite dissatisfied with the Biden administration now because he has taken this approach from the very beginning. In some respects, it's even more craven in that upon assuming the presidency, Biden not only brought in the former negotiators from the Obama administration like Robert Malley, but he even had Malley give the Russians the leadership role. And of course, it is the Russians who are in Syria, who are supporting the Shia Alawite regime there, and want this Shia strategic alliance, which of course with Iran at its pinnacle. So it was a pro-Iran strategy, and
against the Iranian people. Now with the 40 days of demonstration after Masa Amini was killed, do you think is there any chance to this negotiation in Vienna to continue?
So, Maria, what I'm sensing, and I was in Iran during the 1979 revolution, and I've followed Iran quite carefully ever since, is that at no time in my professional political life have I seen the regime so much on the edge of the cliff. I could see it tip over. After the Green Revolution, both the Supreme Leader and the head of the IRGC afterwards said, we were on the edge of the cliff. They used these exact words. And to me, when I look at what's going on in Iran right now, we're even further on the edge of the cliff. It's for the first time, I think, that the people could actually win against the regime.
Do you advise that this administration get more involved to help the demonstrators? One of the writers I know, Jackson Richmond, he said the CIA should give weapons to help these demonstrators, and other analysts say America should be not biased to any party. So what is your opinion here?
Yeah, my opinion, Maria, is that the very least we could do is to vigorously support the people. We have not supported the people, tragically, either the Obama administration or in the Biden administration. I was at the White House during part of the Trump administration, and we vigorously supported the people. We just needed some more time for our plans to work out. But yes, financial support, security support, arms support. I think the U.S., that's the very least that we could do at this point.
You mentioned that there is like a Russian-Iranian collaboration or mutual interest. Let's quote here Russia's representative to the Security Council, Vasily Nebenzia, accused Western countries of violating the United Nations Charter by calling for dispatch of a commission of inquiry into allegations of Russia's use of Iranian drones. Your approach here?
The Russians are humiliated, for one, because they're actually relying upon the Iranians. The Russians are a very proud people. They're an ancient civilization. And for them to have to rely upon people who they actually look down on, people from the Middle East, is humiliating. So I think in some respects this is sort of classic, almost Soviet propaganda. It's what's called a flip accusation, or it's projection. It's like, we're so embarrassed that we're dependent on the Iranians for drones that we are going to somehow weaponize this against you Americans, or you in the West. And it's a way of that, you know, insecure people do this. You know, if you criticize them, they'll throw it right back at you. But it's also a really sort of a Soviet tactic of disinformation.
But this is a fact. They are relying on Iran drones in Ukraine, especially when the Israeli president said that Iran was providing lethal weapons that kill innocent civilians in Ukraine, echoing U.S. allegations in this regard. How do you see that?
That's absolutely true. I mean, it's the Russians are losing in Ukraine, and they're a very sore loser. They're not magnanimous. They will commit atrocities on their way out, and that is their way of essentially terrorizing the people on Russia's periphery into submission. And it's absolutely true. They have no compunction whatsoever about using weapons against innocent civilians, and it just goes to show you how much gall they have to accuse the West or the United States in the Security Council, in the United Nations, about our violations of international law or humanitarian law, because they are in fact the worst offenders.
What about the nuclear weapon? The Russian military began the Grom exercises, which Defense Minister Shoigu said a crushing nuclear strike by the strategic defense forces is in response to a nuclear strike by the enemy. How do you see Russia involved in using in the future or whatever a nuclear strike or a nuclear weapon?
Yeah, so Maria, during the Soviet times, as well as in the early years of the Russian Federation, Russia's nuclear doctrine was quite clear. In recent years, there's been a lot of muddying of the doctrine. For example, the Russian Navy has different nuclear doctrine than its ground forces. And I believe that, and this was done under Putin, and I believe this was done in order to create some more ambiguity, to give the Russian leader, Putin, more maneuverability, more flexibility, to create this ambiguity as to what he would do. I believe right now that the Russians are losing so badly.
It's just a threat. Nothing can be serious.
Yeah, well, what it is I believe that raising the nuclear issue is really the last card that he would have to play. Right now, we know, Maria, that Putin's biggest fear is not international; it's domestic. There are members of his inner circle. There are oligarchs. There are people in the military and the security forces. These are what we would in the West call criminals. They're like mafia. They operate like mafia. They are Putin's friend and his ally, while Putin is strong. As Putin gets weaker, they will start to pull out the long knives. And if they are too damaged, they will take Putin down. And so there are many reports now coming out of Russia that Putin is not sleeping. that he is he's very worried, that he is actually very suspicious of people in his inner circle, and there's a lot of now, and he's not only that, he's also pitting various former allies against one another. So there's a level of desperation in his behavior, and this is actually distracting him a lot from prosecuting the war in Ukraine. And he's made horrible decisions in that regard, which to me shows that he's actually more focused on his individual survival back home than he is on any victory.
But this war creates a kind of chaos in the region. Everybody is hurt by this war, and especially if we're going to talk about the energy crisis. How do you see the Biden administration is facing this crisis? Is there any solutions? How that does reflect on the American citizen?
Yeah, so it's a horrible problem now, Maria. I mean, inflation in America right now is actually at a higher level than I have any memory of in my adult life. When I was much younger, we did have significant inflation under President Jimmy Carter. It's creating lots of chaos. You're absolutely right. In one sort of perverse way, however, the energy crisis is actually feeding the agenda of the Democratic Party, and particularly the most progressive wing of the Democratic Party. What we see is a really this headlong push in the direction of green energy right now. And we've cut fracking, we've cut drilling, we've cut processing of energy products in the United States. There's this push.
This is a long-term process. It can't be realized in 5 or 10 years.
That's right. That's right. It is a long-term process. And don't get me wrong. I mean, I support clean energy. I don't want the environment to be polluted. I have 3 children. I want there to be a healthy environment. But it has to be done in a way that makes strategic sense.
Exactly.
And I think that one of the reasons why the American people are so upset at Biden right now is that he's not coming clean with them. For example, one of his legislative victories that he talks about is the Inflation Reduction Act. But if you actually look at the Inflation Reduction Act, it has all these provisions for green energy subsidies. Actually, the Democratic Party is now calling it the most significant climate bill ever. So on one hand, they're claiming it to be inflation reduction, but it's really the most significant climate bill ever. What happens is really common sense, is that if you are moving in the green energy direction, you want oil prices to be very high to make green energy more attractive. And this is really sort of the chaos that is emerging out of the Ukraine crisis as well.
Strategy bothered the European, accusing USA by being double standard. Why European Union are allies to US? Why they are upset from the high price gas high prices?
Yeah, well, it certainly affects them very much, close to home. European energy prices we claim about them here in the United States, but they're much higher in Europe. And really, I think that part of the problem that we have in the United States with the Democratic Party misleading the American people about how easy it is and how cost-free it is to move from a hydrocarbon economy to a green economy. You have some of this short-term thinking as well in Europe. For example, Angela Merkel recently stated that she had no regrets about linking Germany's dependence to Russia through the Nord Stream pipelines. That she said this was the cheapest possible energy, and also there were quite a few German politicians who made lots of money from the Russians through this transaction. But
talking about Saudi Arabia, let's say the things as it is. President Biden asks them to delay the OPEC Plus decision after the election. So how do you see that? Yeah,
no, this is one reason I think that Biden is so unpopular in the polls is that this is short-term thinking. This is essentially playing politics with the average, with the considerations and the issues that impact the ordinary American. He's saying, please just give the American people this short break on gas prices because I need to get reelected. And this is very cynical, and it's an assumption that Biden's assuming the American people don't see through it, but they do. They're tired of these games, and they're the victims of these games.
Talking about the polls, how do you see the elections on November 8th? Of course, the Republicans gonna win the House and the Senate. Can you elaborate more?
Yeah, so a very wise person told me, Maria, that in Washington there's two types of people. There are politics people and policy people, and there's almost no one who does both. I'm a policy person. I am notoriously poor at predicting political outcomes. However,
it's a calculation.
It's a calculation. What I can tell you from my smart friends who do follow politics is it seems that the Republicans will pick up between 18 and 28 seats in the House. That's what I'm told by the smartest people I know who follow politics. The Senate, I know less about. It's quite close, but it's the House that is really the prize, just because so much can be done from the House if it is in Republican hands. So I wish I could give you a better answer for that.
Yeah. Following the news of today, Secretary Antony Blinken spoke with UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed. He expressed thanks for the UAE's role in hosting U.S. citizen Bakir Namazi. You know his story. He was released from Iran, and Blinken emphasized the United States steadfast support for Ukraine's sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity. How do you look at this partnership between the U.S. and UAE?
Yeah, so Maria, again, I would say that what we're seeing now is this is some very last-minute diplomacy that is, again, too little, too late. Certainly both Obama and the Biden administration, looked down on the Gulf Sunni states. Of course, they wanted to normalize Iran at the expense of the Sunni states in the Gulf. Right now, it's clear to everyone that the strategic momentum is moving away from the Islamic Republic of Iran, away from the regime. It's moving to the people, and it's also moving in the direction of the Sunni Gulf and their Israeli partners. And we have some, very promising initiatives underway right now in the Eastern Mediterranean with the Israelis and the Lebanese, with their demarcation agreement. Defense Minister Gantz is in Turkey right now, meeting with Erdogan. Even the Greeks and the Turks are getting more cooperative. So you see this momentum that is going in the opposite direction of the degree of the direction that the Obama and Biden administrations wanted it to go, and it's now so advanced that they're trying to get in on the very end.
The demarcation deal between Lebanon and Israel, what are the implications of this deal toward Israel as a state?
It's very positive, Maria, extremely positive. Under the leadership of the Trump administration, of course, we had the Abraham Accords, and this, in my mind, was the crossing of a strategic Rubicon. In that, once you normalize the Israelis and the Sunni Arab leaders of the Gulf, there's really no going back. It's only forward momentum. It's only a positive trajectory. And so in my mind, this is just really an extension of that. That Israel has, greatly deepened its relations with the Sunni world in a very positive way. And there's even, of course, now increased defense cooperation, focused against, deterring and safeguarding the region from Iran. Mm-hmm. And it's just spreading out further.
What is the future of Iranian proxies like Hezbollah in this situation and Houthis in Yemen?
Yeah, I think they're in a lot of trouble. I mean, at every step of the way, Maria, I've been disappointed that the Democrats in the White House have been releasing enormous sums of money to the Islamic Republic. Some of it in these great bales of cash, which are very easy then to distribute, and that's actually designed to make it easy to distribute to terrorists. If it's in cash, it's the easiest way to get to terrorists, obviously. Yeah. You're not using financial transactions. So it was known when these enormous bales of $100 bills, when they were released by the United States government to the Islamic Republic of Iran, it was known this money would go to Hezbollah. Absolutely, there's no question about it. That's why it was done that way. So if the Biden administration does not continue that approach, and if they stop releasing these frozen funds, I think it's very bad for the Houthis and Hezbollah and the other proxies.
I have a question. If the Democrats knows that this money is going to the terrorists, and what is this? They are the double standard in this situation. How they fight terrorism and they sponsor it at the same time?
As far as this, I mean, first of all, you have to look at priorities. I mean, things are not black and white. There are these various shades of gray, and you have to look at what were the strategic priorities of let's say the Obama administration. And the reason why I keep coming back to Obama is that Biden is a faint shadow of Obama. What he is doing, he's continuing the Obama policies, but with less conviction. Obama had a lot of conviction. He wanted to reshape the world order. And part of that was really strengthening Iran at the expense of America's traditional democratic allies in the Middle East, primarily Israel. This became very clear. Obama saw Israel as an imperialist outpost, a Western transplant in a Middle Eastern context that didn't belong there. He sort of saw things through the sort of critical race theory lens, and he had contempt for Israel. And so his strategic objective was to balance Israel by strengthening Iran. To answer your question about Hezbollah and releasing funds to Hezbollah, he knows what Iran is. It is a terrorist nation. So if he's going to normalize a terrorist regime in Tehran, it's not a very big step to normalize that terrorist regime's terrorist proxies. It's not such a big step.
Thank you for this interview, Adam. It was a nice conclusion, and of course my viewers will be happy to have this information. Adam Lovinger, thank you for having you here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Maria.
Hey, Maria Malouf here. Please click to like and subscribe to Maria Malouf TV YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.